for joining myself, Sam. Massive thanks to our listeners as well. So if you've joined me on my business page, fantastic. I share it on also my personal page as well. So Sam, the key question is on evolution of buy-to-let. So we go into that in a little bit more detail in just a moment. In case there's any listeners out there who don't know you, Sam, you've been in property since 2001. You've worked for some of the leading estate agents. Do you want to explain your experience, particularly overseas as well? I know you got international experience also.
Yeah, sure. So I started out in property in 2001. Started out as an estate agent. So I've been doing it nearly 20 years. I was doing sales and lettings, working for large corporates such as Hart Estate Agents in Northeast London, as well as Douglas Allen Spiro at the time, which is now Douglas Allen, part of Aaron Estates, and also some really good independents. And I've been in and around sales and lettings, buying properties myself, flipping small ones, and then hanging on to a few. And the capital growth of the few that we held on to were the ones that have kept me in good stead over the last 20 years, especially buying in London and the Southeast. Right now, I continue to grow the portfolio. I moved the buy-to-let of a single let into HMOs. And also work with a development finance fund provider.
Look, it was interesting because Jack Chiggins opened my eyes yesterday, because what I consider buy-to-let, depends, to be fair, because, I think of buy-to-let as being residential, and that's where primarily the focus is. But Jack was looking at it from a wider scale and looking at the commercial side as well. And it depends on people's definition of what buy-to-let is. What
Exactly.
Yeah, so I have to admit, I think as buy-to-let as always resi. Now Jack sees it as commercial as well. Where do you see the opportunities in buy-to-let, whether it's resi or commercial? And I think your experience is much more resi rather than commercial.
Yeah, so I've really been predominantly in the resi space, and buy to let is, I mean, if you break that phrase down into what it actually is, it's just buying something to let it out with the intention of holding on to it and renting it out. And that could be for commercial, it could be for retail, it could be for industrial, or it could be for residential units. So you can do the buy to let approach on any of these different types of properties. The buy to let mortgage, which was a loan against a property that was targeted to landlords and property investors. The buy-to-let mortgage was purely for residential assets. So that's kind of how it's come about. But I mean, I agree with Jack. I think that these days, whether you're doing HMOs or single lets, or even doing the kind of serviced accommodation approach, whatever you're trying, or going down the commercial route, whatever you're trying to do, if you're trying to buy and hold on to the property, that's an equivalent, that's the evolution of the buy-to-let market, where it's gone from everyone just focusing on residential units, 1-2 bedroom flats, to going into more specialized sectors.
I was going to say, Sam, the key thing which I forgot to say at the beginning of this interview is you're going to be joined by Stuart Scott of Co-Living Spaces, very much into the co-living side.
Yeah.
Tony Egan, more traditional landlord stroke investor, moving on to investor. Daryl Norcott from the lending side. You're also from the lending side now as well. So you've got a really holistic view, both estate agents and also with HTCP, Hilltop Credit Partners. Hopefully I've got the abbreviations right. So look, in terms of Monday, the focus is going to be a lot on the opportunities. What do you see yourself doing? Is it really taking a really balanced view of buy-to-let? Because I know you've got interest in buy-to-let, not just in London, not just in, I don't know, discriminate against other areas of the UK, but London's possibly more sexy than other parts of the UK. So what do you look for when you go for buy-to-let, Sam?
So when I go for buy-to-let, I'm looking at yield. Mainly the yield is what drives my decision-making process. Also, there is an element of convenience of management, because some people don't mind managing things that are far away from them, 3-4 hour drive, for example, because I'll have a local agent on the ground that'll be able to do all the maintenance, all the viewings. Personally, I prefer to have things that are a little bit more close proximity to where I live. So if there is a problem, I can jump in the car and go and check it out. And when I say close proximity, I mean an hour up to 2 hours maximum drive. That's the furthest that I will go. And what you'll find is that the further you go out of London, the better the yields become. So the more attractive they become. But what you're also doing there is sacrificing what made me as comfortable as I am, which is the capital growth in the north and the areas where you've got better yields, stronger yields, better cash flow. You historically haven't had the capital growth in the same way that you've had in London. So there's a bit of a payoff one way or another. If you stay close to London, don't expect such a great yield, but you can expect better capital growth. If you go further away, you can have the opposite. And I think where you're based is going to determine what anyone's kind of comfortable with. Personally, I like London.
I was just curious, Sam, when you look at places outside of London and you want less headache, are you more likely to go for single lets rather than multi-let stroke HMO, or you just have someone who's a managing agent, so that doesn't come in and it's all about yield rather than simplicity? Because if it's a single let, obviously there should be less headaches, to say the least.
Definitely less headaches. I mean, it's risk reward. There's lower risks for voids and maintenance costs and maintenance hikes if you've got, a couple or a single person living in your property, and you're not covering any of the expenses such as the gas, electric, internet, etc. So that's great. And personally, my personal preference, I'm at an age where I don't mind that little bit more work for that little bit more return on my money. So I'd rather have my money working that little bit harder and putting a little bit more pressure on my shoulders in the short term, to have a much better yield. I mean, people like Stuart Scott are going to the next level of co-living, where they've got all kinds of amenities as well that should be on site. You've got these large kind of reserve merchant style co-living blocks, which is a future trend. And I think for urban areas, this is the best way to get the best yield. But yeah, I think that for me personally, I don't mind the extra work that goes into it. I think single lets for me right now are not really worth it. If I was sitting on a lot more capital.
Even in London, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, because in London, you're getting gross yields of about 3, 4, 5% tops, which really your money should be working a lot harder, in my opinion. If I was, let's say, closer to the age of 60 or something, and I'd had a cash pot, 10 times what it is today, perhaps that 5, 6% is kind of good and gives me a lot more freedom of time, which is what I'm looking for eventually. But right now, where I'm willing to put a bit more time and effort and energy in, I'm willing to take that little bit more of a hands-on approach, and co-living, HMO, buy-to-lets, buy and hold, a lot more attractive to me.
Look, Sam, I was going to say, for people to reach out to you and find out and discover a little bit more about yourself, we haven't really mentioned Hilltop Credit Partners here. We haven't mentioned your podcast or YouTube channel. Do you want to mention ways for people to connect with you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you can. Hilltop Credit Partners is a development finance provider, so you can contact me on an email there, sam@hilltopcreditpartners.com.
But the key thing is Sam is 2 A's.
Sam with 2 A's, as it is in your background, just on your left-hand side.
Okay.
Yeah, so Sam with 2 A's at hilltopcreditpartners.com. That's development finance. So we're building homes for first-time buyers, downsizers across the country. We're solving that affordable housing crisis. And also, I do have a YouTube channel called Property People, where we share ideas, experiences, problems, and solutions. Brendan, you've been on it. We're up to episode 15. And it's just loads of good content sharing.
So you've had Rod Turner on it. You've had Kieran Gill, I believe, on it. I think you've had Susie Cole. I can't go through the whole list, but I know which one was the best interview.
Absolutely. I mean, and they're really good fun, to be honest, because we get to just talk property for an hour. We get to know about people's backgrounds. So in the same way that you asked me at the beginning, what's my background? How did I get into property? We go a little bit deeper into that to see how people get motivated to do what they end up doing and how they make it a success. And it's just really, really fun.
Just final question, Sam. So what do you think the key question to ask you this coming Monday, the 22nd of June? It's at 9:30 in the morning, 9:30. So we're starting slightly earlier. Panel kicks off at about 10 o'clock, but before that, we've got bite-sized coaching from Richard Thorpe, ex-international rugby player. It's not quite bite-sized this coming Monday because given him a bit of an extension in terms of timing. We've got a funding update from Bond Finance, and then the elevator pitches before we have the panel about 10 o'clock in the morning. So chaired by Jack Jiggins of EXP Property. So what do you think the key question Jack should ask?
Is buy-to-let dead? That was a question that was coming up time and time again over the last 5 years. And, I would say in its traditional form, yes, it is to a certain, in for the most part. It's still not completely dead. There are still a lot. I know a lot of overseas buyers are still quite happy to get their cash into London, into the UK for a lower yield.
Even right now, Sam, even right this month?
Yeah, the pound is weak. Stamp duty for international buyers is about to go up, so I think there's another window, another surge of international buyers coming to the market, and for them to get 5-6% with the potential of long-term capital growth, as London and the southeast of England has had good capital growth over the last 20 years. I think there's still opportunity, but is it what it used to be? No, it has come a long way. It has evolved, and there are a lot more opportunities out there. But I think you also have to be a little bit more of a sophisticated investor. Back in the day, accidental landlords getting into the buy-to-let market were making good money. I don't think it's that easy anymore.
Sam, I did promise it would be the final question, but when you mentioned international investors, I heard something recently which I've never heard before, but you may have heard of it. So international investors who invest in London can only invest zones 1 to 4. Have you heard that? And then its lending is harder 5 to 6.
No, I've not heard that.
So that's what I heard recently. So I've been listening to lots of podcasts, including your own. I've been, tuning in, and that what I've heard is certainly interesting in terms of the lending space. And maybe at some point we need to consider a panel focus on how to attract international investment as well. So look, Sam, a massive thanks. If the listeners are listening and thinking, look, we'd love for you to host this particular panel discussion, we've got this topic, and you haven't seemed to have chaired it, do let me know. I'm open to ideas. May or may not come out. As I say, there's panels which I've done over the last 12 Mondays, and this is the 13th Monday in a row. Just for the listeners, I'm going to take a break on the 29th of June, so there's no Monday morning, so you can take it easy that particular day. In fact, the week of the 22nd of June is a week long of events. So 22nd is the property brunch, and we continue all the way to the property happy hour, co-hosted by Grace Ballantyne on the 26th. So there's lots in between as well. So Sam, I just want to say a massive thanks for taking time out today. I want to say massive thanks to Paul for giving you the chance to take time out as well. I won't try to pronounce his surname. You can, I won't. And Oberschneider. And thanks to our listeners as well.
Thanks.